Right, good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome to the preliminary round two of English debate. I am Angga Damara as your chairperson and the timekeeper. All right. Now, the motion for this debate is this House would significantly reduce the punishment for people below the poverty line who committed economic crimes. First, let me introduce the debaters. Acting as the opening government for this debate team is from SMA Negeri 1 Samarinda Team A with Ms. Jetsiana Jognesia Tadirogang as the first speaker, and the second speaker is Nayara Damaris Putri Nugroho. For the opening opposition, they're from SMA IT Istiqomah Balikpapan Team A with Ms. Sabira Aditya as the first speaker, and the second speaker is Ms. Nabila Putri Davandri. For the closing government, we have from SMA Istiqomah Balikpapan Team B, the first speaker is Mr. Farhan Rafi Sulaiman Nur, and the second speaker is Muhammad Satria Mahatma Yusuf. And for the closing opposition is from SMA Negeri 1 Tenggarong Team B. The first one is Nicholas Cahyadi, and the second speaker is Violni Keiza Kanovani Surya.
Yes.
Alright. Oke, kawan-kawan, sesuai instruksi Kak Susanto di chat box, mungkin bisa menuliskan namanya dan posisinya. Kita tunggu ya, 1 menit. Beserta namanya ya. We're waiting for 3 more. Two more participants.
Yang opening of government dari SMA berapa?
Can you repeat, please?
Yang opening government.
Opening government dari SMA Negeri 1 Samarinda Team A. The first speaker is Miss Jetsiana Joagnesia Tandiroga.
Bisa di-start aja deh untuk nama detailnya, nanti mungkin di skip, saya cuma butuh nama sekolahnya aja sih kan.
Sure. Miss Jetsiana, I'm going to write it. And the second speaker of opening government is Nayara.
Sus, itu untuk nama-nama peserta nanti aja belakangan, soalnya sudah ada dicatat kok di sini. Aku juga udah siapin scoring sheet-nya nanti. Jadi untuk sekarang mulai aja dulu round 2-nya ya CPTK ya.
Baik, Kak. I would like Miss Nayara to turn on the camera. All right. All right. I'm sure every debater understands the rules, so I will not inform you once again. Are you guys ready? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, now to begin the debate, I would like to invite the first speaker of the opening government, Ms. Jetsiana Joagnesia Tandiroga. The time is yours.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. So for POI, just unmute yourself, and I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think people below the poverty line do not consent to be in the below poverty line for sure. This is the kind of thing that we are under side OG that we are able to justify because those people are being discriminated by the current system that they're facing right now. These people are hindered by the current justice system that they are facing. That's why within reducing the punishment for this kind of people that did not actually consented to be in the poverty line because of the birth lottery that might exist or because of the bad policy that government government might have in the in their current state happen anyways. We think that this is why reducing the punishment for them is a justified way to do, right? So what are we? I will have two things under my speech. First, on why reducing the punishment is justified, and second, why we can still avoid having them to do crimes over and over again. But before that, several mechanisms for this under my speech. First thing, we will get no fines, right? Why? Because it will only put them in an impoverished cycle. They do not have the economic stability in the very they do not have the economic stability in the very they will keep stealing anyway to cover the money loss that they need to pay for fines, right? This is exactly why we do not impose fines, because they are already economically unstable. To the very first start, imposing fines will only make them more and more economically unstable. But secondly, we will still apply jail sentence, but we lessen the amount of jail time. Why? This is way more justified, because when rich people steal something panels, they do not have any critical reason behind it. They can still live like freely and comfortably without stealing anyways, right? So it is unjustified to keep the same amount of punishment to the poor and to the impoverished people when they are clearly at the age of their life, right? Not to mention the reason behind them being poor isn't fully their fault, isn't fully with their consent. It is also the government fault to begin with, for example, right? But thirdly, we provide services like educational activities and like training camps during their jail time, so that when they get out, they get out with something to carry on, right? To find jobs, for example, right? This directly preempts side opposition about when they want to talk about, oh, they can just repeat it again and again since they won't have anything to lose and anything to survive, right? These services, of course, will be provided like by NGO or even institution that are willing to volunteer or even paid by the government to train these prisoners, right? Then what are the characterization about what usually economic crimes that impoverished people will do? First, it will look like petty crimes like shoplifting or stealing and etc., for example, right? Second, so we think that it is different completely from corruption because in the very first place, impoverished people do not have the capital to do that type of crimes, right? That is why in this debate, we are going to talk about the crimes that are most likely to be done by impoverished people, like shoplifting, like all of those petty crimes. So side op cannot, so opposition bench cannot agree. Oh, what about corruption that harms countries and etc.? We think that this will not happen. The type of crimes that will most likely these people are doing will not directly harm a large amount of people, but will only the kind of crimes that they will do is like those petty crimes that they need to do in order to serve in order for their own day-to-day survival, right? So then first argument, why reducing their punishment is justified. And three reasons for this. First, the reason why they commit crime is usually because of the government error, like bad policy or like leading them to cannot access facilities or needs in life, right? These things actually make them behind the poverty line. We think this is why the least that government can do, except bad welfare and uncertain welfare for them, is to reduce the punishment for these impoverished people, right? But secondly, these crimes will constantly being done by these impoverished people, no matter how high the punishment that side opposition bench could give. For example, these people cannot simply go above the poverty line because of the bad economy that their family and them have been through, right? This is why it's justified for them to be reduced the punishment for, because this is because they are doing this for their own day-to-day survival, right? They're doing this for their own need, for their own survival in the world, because they have an unstable economic is the very first start. They cannot just get out of the economic instability, right? But thirdly, they're already in the poverty line. We think imposing high punishment will only make them suffer even more under your side of the house for the things that are not completely their fault, right? Like birth lottery to be born in impoverished people access that are worsened by the bad policy from the government. It is important for three things. First, these people have been neglected by society. This is why it is within government. Responsibility to cater these people and give justice, because they are actually doing those economic crime for their own survival because of the bad economic condition, right? Second, these people cannot be punished with the same amount of punishment that people that are above the poverty line get, because it's a day-to-day survival for these impoverished people, and it's just another crime for those capable people, right? But thirdly, under our side of the house, we at least able to cater these people, because in the status quo they're so discriminated under status quo system, where they're being punished for the things that they should do for their own survival, right? Second argument, why we can still avoid having them to do crimes over and over again. Our mechanism about educational activities and like skill training camp will actually work on our side of the house. Why then it is exclusive on our side of the house, right? We are able to give those people like training camps and like educational activities, right? This is why under side opposition, they can under opposition bench, they cannot just say, oh, these people will do it over and over again, because we already have the kind of mechanism that will educate them, and this kind of training camps that can make them be able to have jobs and be able to have skills that can actually make them get jobs, right? So even when we think what will happen under opposition bench is not impoverished people not doing economic crimes, because I've told you no matter how high the punishment is, they will still do it, right? But what will happen rather under the side opposition bench is that these people will suffer even more for an apple that they get from their neighbor's tree, for example, right? They will suffer for their own sense of survival, that you'll never be punished the same way as those people that commit economic crimes, not for their day-to-day survival. That's why I'm so proud to propose.
The time spent by the first speaker of opening government was 7 minutes and 26 seconds. I repeat, 7 minutes and 26 seconds. Now I would like to invite the first speaker of opening opposition, Ms. Sabira Aditya. The time is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First of all, I'd like to say that I disagree with what the government team stated. The crimes the poor people do not harm a large amount of people. I disagree with this statement because crimes like shoplifting can turn into murder if they want to cover up their crimes. It also harms a large amount of people as other citizens will face a loss of their stuff. Shopkeepers will not be able to gain profit for some time as the stuff they had were stolen. Our team strongly disagrees with the motion. The reason why this House would not significantly reduce the punishment for people below the poverty line who committed economic crimes is because of a few arguments we have gathered. If the punishment is reduced for the poor, it would further encourage them to continue to do these crimes as the punishment is not as harsh. The crime rate will increase and many other citizens of the country will be affected by this. The country will also not be as safe as it used to be. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the people who are given the privilege of having their punishment reduced will sooner or later misuse it. They will start taking things lightly, and this will make crime rates skyrocket. We also disagree with the motion because crime is still a crime, regardless of who does it, because all society must be equal in the eyes of the law, equality before the law. Regardless of who committed a crime, they should receive the same punishment so that the crime rate does not increase. It's not fair if people below the poverty line face an easier punishment. It's not fair if they committed a very bad crime and yet they get the same punishment as a normal citizen who has done a crime that is not as bad as what the poor person committed. Not every poor person doesn't have a choice. Lousy criminals who are poor exist as well. Poor people who are poor because of their own life choices exist. So it is not fair in this case. My argument is that why are you willing to reduce the punishment for those people if it can't make them better? Because they'll start to take the punishment lightly, and in fact, it will just do more harm for the country. Why are you willing to reduce the punishment if it can make the crime rate skyrocket and cause more harm for the other citizens of the country? If it causes more harm than good from many aspects, why would you reduce the punishment for these people? Thank you. That is all from me.
The time spent by the first speaker of opening opposition was 2 seconds and 2 minutes and 29 seconds. I repeat, 2 minutes and 29 seconds. The next one, I'm going to invite the second speaker of opening government, Ms. Nayara Demiris Putri Nugroho. The time is yours.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Right. So you guys can just go through audio. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think we're already winning on this debate when side OO decide to not engage onto our structural reasons onto why these impoverished people are actually justified to be for their punishment to be reduced if they do this such of petty crimes, right? Under our side of the house, even though side OO say that, oh, crimes will be increased and etc., we also already preempted in the under Jetsy's speech, which side OO never actually engaged in the very first place, right? Two things I'm going to bring under my speech. Then firstly, some extensions towards our case, but then secondly, some rebuttal and comparative onto why we're champion under this debate. First thing that on the extension of what our case really meant, right? Noticing that what our mechanisms are talking about, we are giving them services for educational and skill training, right? Which notice OO never actually engaged to or even rebut about our case, right? Then why them? I'm going to explain to you why them giving them this impoverished people services for educational purpose or even skill training camp purpose is better than providing service like jail rooms or other needs that prisoners needs, right? For structural reasons then. Firstly, because under our side, you solve the source of the problem onto why impoverished people do this crime in the very first place, right? Because Jetsi already stated to you very clearly that the main problem of why the impoverished people do these petty crimes in the very first place because of the unfairness policy that government do to these poor people, to these vulnerable people in the very first place, right? Because of this economic stability that is they're not content in the very first place, right? That's why education purpose and skill purpose actually something that will actually solve the source of the problem why this impoverished people want to do crime in the very first place, right? Giving them skills so that they can apply for jobs and etc. etc. But secondly, jail environment is harsh. Panels, notice there's aggression everywhere in jails. It is toxic. So noticing on how many impoverished people will do petty crimes, the quantity is a lot, right? Because of the economic stability, jails will only be toxic and way more crowded to the point where government now wouldn't have the capital to pay for these prisoners' food or even having them a better services and needs in jails, right? Because they're so crowded now because there's no mechanism under side OO to solve these problems in the very first place, right? But then third to that, but then when you paid for services, you only need like one NGO or even like one institution that are willingly to volunteer or even to pay from this government, right? But then fourthly, let's be charitable on the side OO, right? Because they never pay under their worst scenario. We will play under our worst scenario, right? But let's be charitable to side opposition, even if the cost is still very expensive to hire institution or NGO that are willingly to help these jails to provide services like what I stated, or like what Jessie stated in her mechanism. We say that it's still very worth it because that service provide these impoverished people with skills to get a job, provide educational purpose. So under our side, we abolish the root of source on why these impoverished people want to steal from someone, want to shoplift in Indomaret, for example, right? That's why under our side of the house, these four structural reasons and other structural reasons that Jesse gave to you are not being engaged by side OO. That's why this is our point still stands still in the very end of the debate, right? But then second extension, then we already stated to you that why is this unjustified. It is justified to reduce these impoverished people's crimes when they do petty crimes in the very first place. Because firstly, Jesse already told you, panels, because of the bad policy that government gave them, and even government didn't help them in the very first place by giving them bad welfare or even uncertain welfare they are still going to be corrupted by higher authorities, for example. That's why government is justified to reduce this punishment for them that are doing something for their survivability in this cruel world, right? That's why on our side we say it's justified to reduce their punishment. This is our principle that still stands still because OO cannot actually, they didn't engage for this, right? So side CG cannot actually bring about this because we already noticed about this, we observe about this, and we give you step by step analysis. We're winning on the principle of why it is justified, right? But then secondly, then some extension, right? Under our side of the house, we give you a way to preempt to avoid the impoverished people to do crimes over and over again by under our mechanism by giving them services, right? That's what side OO never engaged in the very first place, right? They ask us, how about if the crimes will actually increase? No, it will not under our side of the house, right? Because we provide services, educational services, or even skill training camp, and also it will be better because it will be more effective than rather government paying useless money towards jail that will be crowded and even toxic, and it will make these prisoners to get to go do crimes anyway to go away and do crimes anyway under your side of the house, right? But side OO say that this type of stealing can lead to murder or even further harms, right? I think that's not the debate proposed is, right? Because side OO, we are going to talk about economic crimes, right? So murders and everything is not counted in this debate, right? So we're talking about impoverishment doing the possible economic crimes that they can do, like stealing or even shoplifting in the very first place, right? But then secondly, side OO say that, poor people, there are poor people because of their life choices. I think this is not true, because no people want to choose a life where they can be poor, right? Everyone have a safety net in the very first place, right? Poor people exist because unfairness happened in the policy. Poor people exist because of birth lottery, where they do not consent into born into poor family, and etc., right? That's why we actually accomplish on this accomplish on this principle, because we notice what is actually wrong with the policy, what is actually wrong with the government error that actually affected why this many people beyond the diving into the under the poverty line in the very first place, right? Then why that lastly, let's do a comparative, or even why we champion under this debate. Because first, we actually do a step-by-step analysis and structural reasons onto why these poor people want to steal in the very first place, right? Secondly, we gave you a solving mechanism by services and an NGO that is way more cheaper and way more effective than letting this government throw money onto jail that will be toxic anyway in the future. But then thirdly, then under our side, we cover all of the principal aspects that side CG cannot bring about anyway in the very first place. Right? We say protect the poor people, not make them only suffering, which are fines that they will actually pay, but they with their fines that they actually pay, but again in the future they will actually just steal again to cover up their money loss in the very first place. That's why we're so proud to be on OG.
The time span by the second speaker of opening government was 7 minutes and 20 seconds. I repeat, 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, I would like to invite the second speaker of opening opposition, Ms. Nabila Putri Davandri. The time is yours.
Okay. Hello to all the members of the House. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First, I disagree with the statement that poor people, because of choice, do not exist. Some poor people choose to be poor through their life choices because they are lousy criminals who choose not to work. And then they must be taught a lesson, because poverty is not an excuse to commit a crime. They can find a job, at least make a living to prevent the crime they can do, right? And then the cons of reducing the sentence, this will certainly make the perpetrators less deterrent and commit the act again at a later time, and it will sure bring a big harm, not only in the economic category, it also can be in another category. The government team say that the other crime except the economic is not in the motion, but in fact we're just reminding you guys that this little crime can make a big harm to the society. And then, as the first speaker said before, crime is still a crime regardless who committed it. If the punishment for criminals is reduced just because they are poor people, is that really fair? Is that a really true justice? That's all from me.
The time span by the second speaker of opening opposition was 1 minute and 22 seconds. I repeat, 1 minute and 22 seconds. Now, I would like to invite the first speaker of closing government, Mr. Farhan Rafi Sulaiman Nur.
Okay, I will start my speech on 3, 2, 1. So why do we need to acknowledge and support that we need to significantly reduce the punishment for people below the poverty line who committed economic crimes? Because the first one, people who are below the poverty line are hungry. People who are hungry, they cannot act irrational. They can act rationally. Even they cannot tell what's good and what's not. I got this research from USDA that starvedness can damage the health of the physic body of the poor people because they cannot eat. And then the second one are poor people cannot even get what is it get education. Poor people cannot get education, so there is so minimum of knowledge of the law that regulates all behavior. They don't know what's good or what's bad. That's why uh, that's why when they don't even get education and they don't even get food, they cannot think, and all they think is just to eat because they are hungry. All hungry people can think is just to get food to feed their families, just to make them full. That's why people who are below the poverty line steal for food. Like this is I got this research from 28 July 2020 in Banyuwangi. A man steal a cassava to feed their family, and he got punished 5 years of jail. That's not fair. With the minimum of help from the government, with the minimum help of the government and the government assistance that does not reach the poor, they lack of money, and that's why they starve, and they just steal just to get their belly full. And we totally agree with this motion, and we all need to acknowledge and support that we need to significantly reduce the punishment for people below the poverty line who committed economic crimes. They need our help. They need us. I think that's all for my argument. Thank you.
The time spent by the first speaker of closing government was 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I repeat, 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Now I would like to invite the first speaker of closing opposition, Mr. Nicholas Cahyadi. The time is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, member of the opposition. I'm not agree with the statement that has been said by the government because poverty line is not an excuse to reducing the punishment. There's no reason to reduce the punishment. It's a crime, then it's a crime. Why did they would do that if they're gonna get jailed or gonna get the punishment? And then the punishment shouldn't be reduced. All of people need to get the same so we shouldn't reduce it. Thank you.
The time spent by the first speaker of closing opposition was 1 minute and 48 seconds. I repeat, 1 minute and 48 seconds. Now I would like to invite the second speaker of closing government, Mr. Muhammad Satria Mahatma Yusuf. The time is yours.
Starting one, two, three. We totally agree with this motion, just like what my partner said. Do poor people deserve a long and not reduced prison term in our opinion? Because they are poor people, they are hungry, and because of that hunger, he doesn't think rationally. How do poor people think? How can they think rationally when they are hungry? Those people can only think how they can eat and he only thinks to survive whatever it is. And because of that, there are those people who steal food to support their families, and not all of them get help from the government. Poor people, most of them are uneducated because they do not have the money to go to school or other education. From food, they are difficult, especially from the cost for school or other education. And because of that, we agree with this motion to reduce the detention period of poor people, and because of their lack of education, they don't know what is right and what is wrong. And they also don't all get help from the government or help from anywhere. Even most of them weren't seen because of that. Because of that, they got no help from anywhere. And that our team really agree with this motion. Just like what my partner said, we all need to acknowledge and support that we need to significantly reduce the punishment for people below the poverty line who committed economic crime. They need us. Thanks. That's all from me.
The time spent by the second speaker of closing government was 1 minute and 29 seconds. I repeat, 1 minute and 29 seconds. Now, I would like to invite the second speaker of closing opposition, Ms. Violni Keiza Kanovani Surya.
One, two, three. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Here I am, the second speaker as the opposition whip. I will explain why this House not believe and not supporting the motion. It's not fair if, example, a rich, capable person who committed economic crimes doesn't get a punishment. Instead of that, the person below the poverty line who committed economic crimes, but they got the punishment. It doesn't fair if the punishment they get is not the same. We should give equal punishment so they will know how to be responsible for the crime cases that they make. If we reduce the punishment, it will be bad and the impact will be even greater on the surrounding community. Example, they can escape from the punishment and it will make people around them feel not safe. Because of that, we need to give equal punishment, but not to reducing the punishment. So the person who did the crime cases, even a capable person or a person below the poverty line, get the punishment that they deserve without any deductions or any differences. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
The time spent by the second speaker of closing opposition was 1 minute and 14 seconds. I repeat, 1 minute and 14 seconds. All right, now ladies and gentlemen, to wait for the announcement, please go back to the main hall to give the judges a moment to finalize the decision. Thank you.
Halo Kak Reja, udah ada decision Kak?
Ada sih, tapi masih mikir dulu. Bentar ya, aku kasih nomor-nomor dulu.
Oke, kali.
Kamu kenapa itu mic-mu itu?
Aku pakai wireless headset, kayaknya memang itu yang masalah. Enggak jelas ya?
Iya, suaramu kayak dari terowongan jauh gitu.
Oh iya, bentar.
Gimana? Udah lebih baik.
Halo? Kenapa?
Oh,
Nah, ini
sudah lebih
baik
jelas
sih.
kan?
Jelas banget.
Oke.
Oke. He gotta be kidding me.
Karena di 2 dan 3 kah confuse-nya?
Ini ntar kita waktu diskusin kita tetap 15 menit kah? Enggak.
Tetap Kak, 15 minutes.
Kamu hitung kah?
Sudah jalan nggak?
Oh, ya sudah, oke. Aduh, susah sih ini. Tadi open government-nya kok namanya ada 2 ya? Oh, Jetsiana. Sorry. Jetsiana. Oke. Kita buka ini aja deh.